In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Welcome to Be the Wellness Podcast, where we help you master your body, mind, and the experience of life through insightful conversation, interviews with experts and thought leaders, all with a side of marital banter and some good old-fashioned humor.
Yes, we are your hosts, Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and we're committed to helping you live life fully expressed physically, mentally, and experientially. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation.
Welcome, everybody, to Be the Wellness Podcast. Adam and Vanessa Lambert and Penelope
Here.
trying to record this damn thing.
It's proving to be harder than you would think.
Yeah. You know, this is the thing about impromptu podcast recording, extemporaneous speaking, as it were.
What?
Sometimes it's hard to just make the words come out of your mouth, you know?
Well, and it's funny because if you're on a roll and you're in podcast mode, then you, that part of your brain is lubricated and you're ready to, throw out all the words, all the fancy wordsmithing.
Yeah.
But Adam just told me I had the stutter effect on my voice because I was fumbling over my words before we went live, and I seem to be smoothing things out right now.
Yeah, it's
but
everything's coming back online. It's all working out.
Yeah. So we're really excited about this podcast, but have some great fun announcements for you folks. Great and fun. But this week we sent out our official lineup for 2020 for our retreats and our events. So we're really excited to share those events with folks and for people to, receive those in their inboxes. If you're not on our mailing list, make sure you head over to our website and join, because this is how you get the 411. And we are giving you the whole lineup for 2020 so that you can plan in advance. You can choose your adventure, literally. And that way we make space and time for you to really prepare for the things that are important to you.
Yeah, wrap your head around it. Yep. And on that note, one of those will be coming out and announced soon.
Yes.
One of those retreats.
Yes.
That's happening in 2020.
Yes, exactly. And if you are on our list, our mailing list, you are privy to not only the announcements, but the pre-sales.
Correct.
So you actually get the best offers, you get, all the best spots, especially if you are, coming to something that is limited in terms of how many couples rooms it has or how many spaces it has for solos. So a lot of times those things get scooped up and then you kind of miss out on the spot that you wanted. So make sure you're on the list so that you can get your spot and you can get the best price.
Yeah.
And you can get a payment option.
That's true.
If you so very well choose.
If you so very well choose, a payment option can be had.
It can be had
in fact,
for you.
Several.
Listen here, darling.
I went and got my hair cut today.
All of them, actually.
Almost all of them.
All of them,
Actually, you know what I did? I took a lot off the top.
You did?
Which normally it's mostly the sides.
Yeah.
But the gal who was working at the reception area or whatever, she's British or English or I don't know, from the UK, whichever one of those two things is the right terminology for it.
Either or, yeah.
But there's and I gotta ask one of our UK friends what the deal is. But there's a region where people talk without opening their teeth.
Oh.
Their lips are open really wide, but their teeth never move. And I'm like, why does she talk like that? And I mean, I can't even really make that much sound like that, but she was talking at full volume, but with her teeth were clenched the entire time.
All right. So shout out to our British friends and followers. Yeah. Tell us which region that is.
Yeah, what's going on
where
over there?
you don't open your mouth to speak.
Yeah, it's lips are open, but teeth are closed. What's going on? Right.
Maybe she was just holding on to how sometimes you have some gum and you're sick of chewing it, but you don't want to like spit it out yet.
Maybe.
Maybe she just had it like pressed up against the top of her mouth.
It's possible, but she's not the only person. Like now that I've dropped that pin, you're going to pay attention, and you'll hear it. You're like, that's one of those ventriloquist people that they don't move their mouth when they talk. Anyway,
awesome. Okay, well, I will pay attention to that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if anyone out there has a
line on
dead
what's going
ringer on what's going on there,
let us know.
Yes. By the way, that area is not on the retreat schedule. So if you were hoping to really get that experience in depth, that won't be one of our offerings in 2020. However, now that I know this is a thing, I might do some research.
Yeah, we'll put it on the we'll put it on the survey for 2021.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Well, super excited to get to our guest today. She is the lovely and funny Kate Northrup. And if you haven't heard of her, she is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, speaker, and mother. And she's super funny about her kids. So she'll get into some fun stories about them. But she's committed to supporting ambitious women to light up the world without burning themselves out in the process. And she is actually half of a husband-wife duo. So her and her husband, Mike, are committed to this mission. And the most recent, I guess, commitment or piece of this journey is her brand new book called Do Less, A Revolutionary Approach to Time and Energy Management for Busy Moms. And I will say to you right out the gate that even if you're not a mom, this is super helpful.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Kate really dives into is really looking at, the cyclical nature of females and how we kind of really just discount that. And so we'll dive into some of that information, and it's just really informative, really approachable. And by all means, if you can do more in less time, I think we're all for that, right?
Yeah. Or just do less
or just
and accomplish more. Yeah,
you see where my brain goes.
Yeah. Well, but it's one of those things. Like, I think she really nails it. Like while we were recording this podcast, I was secretly going, "Oh, that's Vanessa. Oh, that's Vanessa." It's like, listen to this, pay attention to this. Like, do these things. But she does a really good job of explaining how to make this approachable and kind of I guess maybe some of the underlying factors that make being busy, or like the busy trap so prevalent, and then like what to do about it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, this was a doozy.
Yeah, we really enjoyed this conversation, and I think that you guys are going to get a lot out of it, and you're going to get even more out of the book. So definitely recommend it. Again, it's Do Less, A Revolutionary Approach to Time and Energy Management for Busy Moms. And without further ado, here is Kate.
Okay, we are live. Welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
super cool.
Thanks for being here. I mean, first of all, anyone who writes a book on doing less but getting more done, like, that's it. I'm in. Yeah, but in all seriousness, the book really caught my attention because obviously we're living in a world where more is, or where we're taught that more is more. Yeah. And you're really starting to look at this as, and actually you're looking at this from a really great perspective, which is intuitively and intrinsically, we're all exhausted. We're all overdone, so to speak. And yet we aren't giving ourselves permission to feel that and to start to take action in that direction because, of the status quo, because of the systems that are in place. But you really go into some of the science as well as, obviously acknowledging the intuitive sense that's there for folks. And so I really love that you're speaking to kind of like left and right brain for people and helping them understand how important this stuff is. And so I'd really love to just get your backstory of, how you came to the point where you're like, you know what, I really want to write a book about doing less. What was that point and what was that inspiration?
Well, just backing up a little bit, I was raised in a very doing more kind of household. Both my parents are doctors, super New England education focused, like, if you've overslept by 30 minutes, you've wasted the day kind of philosophy. even back to my grandmother, she had 6 kids, and to this day, she can barely sit down for 2 seconds. She's 93 and just, always moving and shaking. So, and her motto that she raised my mother with was, don't ask for a lighter pack, ask for a stronger back. So that's kind of like the family training.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, not motto, but training is a good word, right?
The training. Yeah.
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination. And, and that's not unlike many, many families in the United States. And so I really can't speak like cross-culturally because I've never lived for extended periods outside of the United States. But basically, I worked really hard, did the whole thing you're supposed to do, and built a successful business. And then I got pregnant, and it knocked me completely on my ass. I just had never had an experience before, as an athlete, as somebody I've always been really strong. I get naturally able to just by pushing harder. And when I got pregnant, I just couldn't. And it was it was very difficult to have been so physically capable my whole life and suddenly not be able to overcome it there was nothing. So
by sheer force.
By sheer force. Like literally, it was so weird to have my body basically like taken over.
Right. I'm in charge now.
Yeah. I mean, really, pregnancy is a parasitic relationship.
You've been boarded for sure.
Yeah. Whoa. It is no joke. And so I cut my work hours about in half. I never really thought about that. I just stopped. And then my husband and I run our own company. There's no backup financial plan. No one has a salary. No one has a trust fund.
Right.
No one has paid parental leave. And so we needed to get the same results. And financially, with me working half the amount. Also, when our daughter was born, I had a really traumatic birth experience. I had postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum insomnia. She was really sick and woke up like every hour for the first year of her life, scratching herself, bloody. Like it was like out of a horror movie. I mean, parts of it were really wonderful, but it really it sucked. I hated the whole thing, most of it.
That's honest. I love it.
I know. I'm very honest about motherhood. It's so hard. The shining light of the whole thing is we sat down with our accountant 1 year after our baby was born and realized we had made the same amount of revenue as in previous years when we had both worked, 50, 60 hours a week. And this was with only 10 hours of childcare with a baby at home who was sick and me not functioning even close to my normal amount.
Right.
And so I thought, well, if we could have made the same amount of money with both of us working less than half the amount with very limited bandwidth, what was I doing my whole adult life?
That's right.
And so once I kind of came out of my fog and came up from the underworld of that first year of parenting, I thought, well, if I could do this by accident, certainly I could do it on purpose. And I'm not different than other people. So quite possibly they could try this stuff out too. So I kind of went backwards and began to codify what did we actually do? Why did this work by accident? And that became Do Less. I mean, I wasn't like, I'm going to write a book about this, but eventually, that became clear.
Yeah, that's incredible because this is such a massive problem. And we do a lot of coaching and health and fitness stuff with people, all over the world, frankly. And a lot of our clients are stay-at-home moms or busy moms one way or the other. And so this is stuff that it just speaks right to the heart of what I think a lot of our folks are dealing with. And so it's incredibly inspiring, and to have the actual, I guess the metrics, right? To be able to go back to your accountant and go, well, no, we actually did exactly the same, if not better. So, wow, what an awesome way to get going.
It was shocking.
Yeah, that is really cool. And, so we don't have children. And I think that, obviously mom's time is just such a hot commodity. And that is just the thing that every mom out there is going to say they don't have enough of. But I think people in general, of course, moms 100%. But I think in general, we are just, if we have a space of time, we think instead of leaving that space open and allowing that space to be, available for stillness or creativity or what have you, I think many of us, myself included, 100%, 100% think, oh, well, I should fill that with something. I shouldn't be allowed to have that space. I shouldn't be allowed to like cultivate times in my life where there's nothing to do. And so before we get into, you know, what you found when you codified it and you sort of distilled out what you did, I'd really love to just touch really quickly on your ideas around whether or not people are addicted to being busy.
Spoiler alert. Yes. And I think here's why. So there's two things I want to say. First of all, why are we addicted to being busy? Because we've all been drinking the water of our culture, which tells us that if you do more, you're more valuable as a human being. Mm-hmm. So we just have to decide, are we going to carry on that belief or are we going to challenge it and create something new? Because it's making us really sick, emotionally and physically. And then secondly, we're addicted to being busy. And so what ends up happening, I really believe that our tendency to always be in action is not only from that cultural indoctrination, but also because we don't want to feel what we would feel if we stopped being busy all the time.
Amen.
And so, you know, work and being busy and taking action and all the things, overscheduling is just yet another numbing behavior in a long list, along with TV, you know, alcohol, drugs, social media, shopping, whatever.
I really want to like let that simmer for a second with folks, because I don't think that, I mean, I really obviously see that, and I even see that in myself for sure, but I don't think that the average person recognizes that their busyness, their story around busyness is, like you said, another coping mechanism. So I hope that people, I really want them to hear that because I think that that is such a key to unlocking, giving yourself permission to now not be busy. Would you agree?
I completely agree. And of course, easier said than done. Like, I'm not somebody saying like, hey, I have got this all figured out. Like, look at my luxurious, amazing life. You know,
I just laying around all day
meditating. You know, if you came to my house, I look like any other mom with two kids, like trying to make it work. However, I will say, like, we can do small incremental things. I'm really about small things making a huge difference. So if you had told me 2 years ago that I was going to be talking about stillness and like the power of meditation, I would have rolled my eyes at you because I was so annoyed with all the people who were telling me to meditate. And yet,
I hate when that happens to you.
Like, I know it's so annoying. I'm annoyed at myself, but like, I just a few days a week. It's not even every day. A few days a week, I sit in my closet on the floor and I meditate for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. It's nothing complicated. And having been willing to move through the not wanting to sit with myself for that long, and now I'm on the other side of it where I'm able to get in there and get to this place where I feel this spaciousness and this bliss. And, you know, the meditation teachers, they talk about, my teacher, Rodney Yee, would talk about like this nectar on your soft palate. And I was like, what the F are you talking about? And now I get it. I'm like, wow, this feels really good, but it felt really uncomfortable before it felt really good. Like so many things in life. And so that discomfort was like sitting with the chatter in my brain, sitting with myself. You know, it doesn't, I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't feel that good, but it's better on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's awesome. Is it Rodney Yee, the yoga teacher?
Yeah.
That does all the videos and yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this, because I know that people want to have some like real takeaways with how they can put this into action, because of course we need an action plan to do less.
Yeah, of course we do.
There still has to be a plan.
I have this one girlfriend who I basically wrote this book for, and she was texting me, yeah, but Kate, like, how do I actually do less? Like, I need you to help me. What do I do? I'm like,
can you put it in my calendar? Like, how is this for real?
Yeah.
So how does it work?
Okay. Well, I mean, there's so many things, but I find the most effective is to first identify what are the biggest energy drains in your life. So I like to categorize it by like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being this area of my life is sucking me dry, and 10 being like, oh my God, it's like I'm plugged into an electricity socket. It's so energizing and awesome. Rate, your financial life, your career or business, your romantic relationship or relationships, your family and kids, friendships, spirituality, your health, your relationship with your body. So those different categories, I think that was like 7 of them. Mm-hmm. You can do whatever categories you want, but those are mine. And then look at which category had the lowest score. And here's what's so cool. So my book the subtitle is about time and energy management. Honestly, I believe time management is a myth. We're all trying to manage the wrong resource. And if we would manage our energy better, we have more than enough time. This is what I find every single day.
I love
and so if we would identify where we're leaking the most energy, it might be one relationship. It might be a perspective or a belief. It might be the fact that we're not taking care of our bodies. I mean, I know that's what you guys talk about. So if you can just plug up an energy leak in one area of your life, it automatically gives you more energy in every area of our life, because there is no such thing as compartments. Mm-hmm. It's all interconnected. And so I would say that would be my first step, is to notice where you're draining your energy, because if you get it back, you're going to have way more energy to do the things you need to do. And oftentimes lack of time is actually what we say when really we have a lack of energy.
Absolutely. So what if that biggest drain happens to be your job, or happens to be the main thing that is the thing that takes up most of your time and is the thing that, creates your income and all that good stuff? How do you talk to people about dealing with that, shoring up that energy?
So I think that there's options, right? So certainly, of course, people think like, well, are you telling me to quit my job? I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know what your job is. I don't know what your financial situation is. Right. So not necessarily, but maybe.
Right.
So certainly switching jobs is always a possibility. However, I really like to optimize the situation we're in before changing the situation, because I think we can change a lot by changing our perspective and changing our behavior. So one of the things that I teach specifically for women, though I think men can tap into this as well, is cyclical energy tracking. So this has to do with a woman's hormonal cycle. Women cycle every 28 days pretty predictably, as long as they have a natural, unmedicated regular cycle. Men cycle hormonally every 24 hours. So very differently. I mean, this is what you guys teach. So
but I love that you mentioned that. Yeah. In the book, it was really, I love that you started with that, because you don't really realize that like men do have their own cycles. They're just in a much more compressed window.
Exactly. And so for women, it's just important. Do you folks, do you have a 50-50 listener audience, or is it more women, or do you know?
It's primarily women. I mean, in general, our audience, and I think, and our audience tends to be 35 to 55 with some outliers in the 25 to 65 range. But we've got some dudes out there too, but it's definitely, it's women. Yeah.
So here's what most women don't know, and men too, but it affects women more, is that we as women are operating in a work culture, in a corporate culture, certainly, but even us business owners, in a culture that was created by men for men, because we live in a patriarchy. So it doesn't mean men are bad. I love men. However, we have to know that the system that we are trying to fit ourselves into as women was not designed for us. And so women are trying to operate on this 24-hour cycle where we eat and train and perform and do all these things in the exact same way in this 24-hour blueprint, which literally doesn't match our biology.
Interesting.
So stop doing that and get to know what's happening in your body. And so what we can do, I'm bringing it back to your question about the job, which is that if you stop expecting yourself to be a robot and show up every 24 hours the exact way you did before, you may find that you have more joy. in your job. And this doesn't mean, listen, I understand. I'm not telling you like to take off work when you have your period, for example, right? But there are these 4 distinct energetic phases you'll go through every 28 days. Men go through them every 24 hours. And you can honor them a little bit. So like, the couple of days you have your period, don't beat yourself up for the fact that you're in a little bit of a brain fog. But maybe that's the time to sit down and download your ideas for your new, for your new proposal, because you're the most intuitive during that time of your cycle. You have the most interconnectivity between your left and right hemispheres. Then during your follicular phase, the week after you have your period, that's your springtime energy. Like that's your get up and go. That's the time to go hard in your workouts and to be energized, to initiate projects. Then your ovulation portion of your cycle, like the day you ovulate, but also kind of the 2 days before and after, that's your time for that you're going to be the most magnetic and the most verbally fluent. Waitresses report having their highest tips during that time. So there is like this pheromone thing that happens that you are literally more attractive, but also energetically more attractive. So I'm not trying to freak you out about like, inter-office harassment. Think about this metaphorically speaking, right?
Right.
So that would be the time if you're gonna pitch your boss something, like do it the day you're ovulating because you'll have better results. And then your luteal phase is the 10 to 14 days before your period. And that time is the time that your energy turns inward. And it's a time where you're very detail oriented. You're going to want to cross your T's and dot your I's and kind of go in and put your nose to the grindstone and finish things up. So you can capitalize on that energy by, that's a great time to do Excel work or data analysis, or I'm sure people have all sorts of different jobs, but those are examples. And then that time would not be the time, probably the few days before your period, to like go out for drinks with your coworkers after work, because you're not going to feel like it. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body is designed to have an outward time of the month and an inward time of the month. And our culture just only celebrates the outward time. But if you begin to embrace the inward time too, you actually do get more energy reserves. I like to think of it like a boomerang. So if you were to pull, not a boomerang, a slingshot, if you were to pull back, when you pull back and really honor the time when you have your period and you have lower energy and that luteal phase, then when you let go and release, the springtime and the summertime energy is so much stronger, and you can go further faster when you've honored the rest, which obviously is the same with workouts, right?
Yeah, totally. That is fascinating. So, because there's a lot of information out there. I think you were kind of pointing to this about optimizing your workflow and your energy throughout the day, but specifically for men, so it's like, okay, this time in the morning, this is the time of the day that you're the most creative and you need to figure out this and this and this. And then it repeats and recycles each day. And I've never heard anyone put this as articulately as you have about just this longer cycle for women. And I hope Vanessa's taking some notes, because, being entrepreneurs, it's like, and managing, working together, living together, and all of the stuff that we do, there's always this give and take of like, I'm ready to do something, she's not ready to do it. She's ready to do something, I'm not ready to do it. And getting that in, in sync somehow, at least a couple days out of the month would be fantastic.
And it does require, it requires a little pre-planning. So I will say, it took me several months to get a handle on this, and that's fine. Any amount of doing it is great. I also work with my husband, and it's complicated, but but it really helps to communicate. So if I get snippy or something a couple days before my period, whereas before, and he's really irritating me, whereas before I would think there was something wrong with our marriage and I have to do a thing about it and da 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 da. Now I'm just like, oh, I'm feeling really luteal. I'm going to go over here and be by myself and just give me space. And it saves us so much time.
That's awesome. I feel like Adam actually kind of keeps track of my cycle more than I do, because I think he's trying to explain my behavior to himself.
Some insights into what's going on. Am I actually in trouble? Is everything okay? What's going on around here?
But, I have to admit that there's a part of me that is really irritated by this and has resisted a lot because I'm like, that is so annoying that I'm that ruled by my hormones that I can't just like be a normal person on a day that's like, labeled a non-normal day or quote unquote, whatever.
But here's what's so interesting. Even your language saying a normal person. So what you're saying is you want to be a man because our entire assumption of what normal is based on a man's biology.
100%. And, I think a lot of that is, when I was sort of indoctrinated into the workforce, and this is how Adam and I actually met. We were firefighters. And so I did that for 5 years. Yeah. Working my way through college and that kind of thing. And you're very right. Like there was a kind of an imprint that I think was left on me during that time that was like, get it together, like soldier up, you know what I mean? And so I think it's sort of left that imprint on me where I'm like, oh wait, I'm not allowed to have an emotion or be tired or have any of those things because I literally was doing a man's job. I mean, obviously women are firefighters, but by far, above and beyond, that is largely structured around a man and the masculine energy for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to know that almost all jobs are organized around that, and having. By the way, men also have lower energy times throughout the day. They usually just overcome them with sugar and caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe not you, but people.
Yes.
Those other people.
Right. And so also, if you are listening and you work, let's say you do work as a firefighter, or perhaps you're a physician. I know watching my mom, she was super into this whole cyclical living thing. It's how I learned about it. But she was delivering babies and she was up every third night. It wasn't like she could be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm feeling low energy, I'm just not going to come in.
Right.
So there's like staying within the structures that we need to operate in to make a living, to show up and serve. And then there's just, you can add an energetic element. So an example she gave was, okay, on the days when I'm having my period or I'm lower energy, can I just walk from my car to the hospital door a little bit slower when I'm heading into surgery? Like it can be that simple to just give your body a nod and just be like, hey, I see you. And this is what we have available for you today.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important thing to kind of hover on for a second, because there's so much that we get tapped into. I mean, when we see this, I'm sure it's everywhere, but we see it especially in the strength and conditioning world. And like a lot of what we get asked is like, well, I'm not really feeling that good today. Should I still train hard? I didn't get very good sleep last night. Should I still train hard? And there's this feeling, I think, that we have. And I have the same thing. And I actually usually lean more towards I could probably use a break. But, some people don't, and they really go for it and they dig and kind of give themselves, and they can kind of get themselves dug into a little bit of a hole. And so if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, it's really just being aware of this cycle and that you can acknowledge it. And just even acknowledging it and giving yourself a tiny little pat on the back or, pet on the head or whatever it is. It's like, it's okay. Everything's going to be cool. Just take a couple steps, slower to get to the door today. That even that acknowledgement in itself kind of empowers you in that position, right? And now you're making the decisions for yourself instead of kind of feeling like you're always coming up against it.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think that any amount that we can listen to our body is sort of like a deposit in our energetic reserves. So would it be lovely for us to take a week off every time we feel like it? Yeah. Right. But like, I have a 16-month-old and a 4-year-old. I'm not doing that.
Right.
And so, plus I'm running a company. So yeah, I think doing that, acknowledging our bodies, but also it's so important to realize that we have been in an at odds relationship with our bodies, especially as women, but I see this with men as well, where we are believing that our bodies should always be different than they are, right? More lean, more shredded, skinnier, especially for women, like that the smaller you are, the better. Like you get to be more powerful, the less space you take up, which is really confusing as a message for women. And that's kind of like a whole other topic. But I believe like every time a woman can listen to where she is in her cycle, and also for a man to say, you know what, actually, like my knee hurts today. I'm going to maybe do some mobility work instead of, a million squats, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like any amount of that is going to heal that connection and allow us to come back into right relationship with our source of energy, of creativity, of everything, which is our physical body. Like we have nothing if our physical body goes out. And right, I mean, life is over at that point.
Right.
But even in other situations, my husband was really sick last year for 9 months, and it was so brutal for all of us. And it was such a reminder of like, wow, this has to be the priority, and not just from a health standpoint, but from a what does my body actually need? I think we can think, supplements, working out, green juice, water, the nutrition. Yeah. And it is all of those things, but I think it's actually much deeper.
Absolutely. So one of the things I really want to make sure we touch on, because you'd mentioned, working by your cycle, or working, within the context of the cyclical nature of our bodies. But what about women who are on hormones or birth control, and B, menopausal women?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about both ends of that spectrum.
So we all are still going to be cyclical regardless of what's going on actually with our hormones. So if you're not having a period, or a non-medicated period, or now I'm getting confused with my negatives.
Right.
If you're on birth control, if you have an irregular period, if you're pregnant, if you're nursing, if you're past menopause, if you're a trans woman, there's a lot of circumstances, right? If you're a man, then I love to follow the moon for some kind of external cyclical thing that I can look at. Now, this might sound really woo-woo. I don't know how your listeners are, but
bring it. They're used to me. It's all good.
Great. There is scientific basis for this. Humans are affected by the moon. We're made up of 60% water. And the data shows that like at the full moon, there are more car accidents, there are more emergency room visits, there are more crimes committed. So we are lunar creatures. Even lakes are affected to the minutest degree by the gravitational pull of the moon. So our bodies are as well. And so if you start to just like, you can very easily insert the lunar phases into your Google Calendar. You could just do a quick Google search for how to do that. Very easy, free. And just start to notice like, okay, today's a new moon. How do I feel? Okay, today's a full moon. How do I feel? And just begin to track your own experience of your cyclical energy in relationship to the moon. It can be really helpful. The other thing that's really helpful about the moon, whereas a woman's cycle will shift, like sometimes I'm cycling closer to the new moon, sometimes I'm cycling closer to the full moon, like sometimes it changes by a day or two. It can be a little unpredictable kind of in the long term, even though it's generally predictable, whereas the moon is going to be the same. It's always like the exact same rotation. So it can just, for me, it gives me this nice sense of grounding. And most of the time that I've been developing this particular body of work around cyclical living, I've either been pregnant or nursing. So I haven't actually had a period, most of it, which is ironic. So I've gotten into like a really great relationship with the moon and just noticing how I feel. So, and the great news is it's the total equalizer because everyone has access and it's free.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm so doing that after this.
Great.
And I think, it is interesting because obviously we notice that like we feel different during different times of the month. And, and obviously we know that all the bodies of water on the planet are affected by the moon. Like, why wouldn't we, when we are, I don't know, what are we? What's the makeup of water that we are?
It's 60%? About 60%.
Yeah. I was like, I feel like it's 60%. So, I mean, why wouldn't we be influenced by that?
Yeah. And there's an interesting field of study that I've been kind of nerding out on recently. And I think it's broadly chronobiology, but I mean, the idea is just how all of the various cycles of, obviously the circadian rhythms of day and night and all of that seem to really affect us, but even the cyclical nature of, the foods that we used to eat, the things that used to be available to us that are now available 24/7, as long as you can get them shipped in from Chile or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much to it. There is so much evidence that's building and so much that just makes sense even anecdotally as to how the natural cycles of, when we put on fat, when we lose fat, when we have the most energy, when our bodies do this, like all of this stuff just seems true. It just really is starting to make a lot of sense to me. And so this is timely. It all kind of fits right in. Yeah.
So the other field that's connected to this is biodynamic farming. So I've had some farmers, which I am not a farmer. I can barely grow like an herb, but but they've said like, this is so cool to hear you talk about this, because in biodynamic farming, if you plant the carrot at this certain time with the moon and the whatever, you get bigger carrots, and it works. And it's just like, wow. So if it works with the carrot, it's going to work with our bodies because we're made of the same stuff.
Right. Yeah.
That is so
at the
cool.
end of the day, it all comes together.
Yeah.
So I want to just mention to you, obviously there's a chapter in the book about how important sleep is. We don't necessarily need to go there, because probably every 5 minutes we harp on how important sleep is to our people. So I just want you to know that we are down with that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. We don't have to do a deep dive, because I think people have got the memo from us at this point. But what I would love to dive into is this idea of becoming a time bender. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, this one's really fun. So there's two types of time. And this was let me back up. Einstein in 1915 declared or came up with the theory of relativity. And in physics, the theory of relativity has to do with the fact that time is relative to an object's mass and speed. But on a human level, what that means is time is relative to to our energy in the moment. And the ancient Greeks described it in this way, as two different types of time. So you just mentioned chronobiology. So chronos, right, from the same root word, chronos is linear time that says that every single hour, every single increment of time is equal to each other, just linear. Kairos says that there is another type of time, which is suspended timeless time. And I describe this as the 5 minutes you waited in line at the coffee shop this morning for your latte felt really different than the 5 minutes you held your baby niece for the first time. Or the 5 minutes, you stood at the altar saying your vows or whatever, right?
Right.
So we've all experienced that there are different kinds of time. And so if you want to become a time bender, meaning expanding time at your will and getting places when you have no business getting there because you left too late, and, making a project fit into a smaller amount of time, and, getting into flow with your work. There's a great book called Flow by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, which talks about this state of being the perfect balance between challenged and also having joy, right? So you get into this flow state, and we have such a great sense of energetic reserve and kind of this renewable energy when we are in Kairos, when we're in that suspended timeless time. We're not looking at the clock. It could have been 3 minutes. It could have been 3 hours. It could have been 3 days. And we actually don't care. Right. And the best lives are lived in Kairos as much of the time as possible. And so to become a time bender, we just have to know that you can change your experience of time and practice whatever gets you present in the moment. Sleep is a big one. I really want to say, if you're tired, you're going to really struggle with this. So I know you guys plug that a lot. I'm going to plug it again.
Sing it. We're all good with it.
The other thing that helps tremendously for me and for a lot of people I work with is breath. So getting conscious of our breath, breathing more slowly, breathing more deeply. I mean, I know there are people who do extensive work about the breath. Some of my friends have studied with, the folks that Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese study with, and that, all their whole thing about exercise is just to get more breath. And my teacher, Rodney Yee, says the same thing. The whole purpose of even moving the body is to breathe more, which is fascinating. So you could really go down a wormhole on breath,
right?
But breath, and then literally just physically being in your body. So if I'm with my kids, for example, I have a tendency to get bored when I'm with my kids because my 4-year-old asks me the same question over and over and over and over again. And my 16-month-old just is like all day, every day. She's like, mommy, 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 mommy. You can say mommy, hi, bye, and shoes. I love my kids so much, but I do get bored. And I'm like, is it bedtime? Whatever. I want to grab my phone. But when I take the opportunity and I'm conscious and I'm like, I'm going to time bend right now. I'm going to dive into this moment instead of try to pop out of it. And I breathe deeper and I focus on something in my immediate environment that could bring me joy or a sense of appreciation. It really expands the moment. And then suddenly I don't care when bedtime is and I can be more present with them. And this joy bubbles up that was not available before when I was trying to speed up time, when I was trying to rush through. So that's sort of the irony with time bending is when we're trying to rush time, time slows down. But when we dive underneath time almost, then we have just as much of it as we want or as little of it as we want. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
In fact, this morning, before we went on the podcast with you, I was feeling compressed for time and I had actually just eaten breakfast. And so my dishes were dirty and I started doing my dishes and I wanted to rush through it to like hurry up. And I just made the intentional decision to just slow down and like be with the process of washing the dishes and just giving thanks and, giving thanks and having gratitude for the time of sitting down, having that nourishment, having the ability to like, be at home where I can make my meal before all of that good stuff. And so, I think that for me, a big piece of that is not only joy, but gratitude, like actually taking a moment to really be in gratitude for what is like that your daughter that shoes is one of her top 4 words. Because I'm definitely in gratitude over that. I don't know about you.
I don't know if I'm going to be in gratitude about that. No, it's super cute. She goes, shoes, shoes, shoes.
I'll keep the gratitude for that one because that one really hit with me. But I love that idea. It's like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be something that is an amazing task or an amazing thing. It could just literally be diving in and finding gratitude around what is actually currently happening.
It's so good. That's so good. That's what it's all about because none of us are getting to the end of our lives wishing we had gotten more done.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, I would love for you to talk about the piece in the book where you name the things that, that on people's deathbeds, what they actually talk about as regretting. And I think this really hits hard. And I know people have probably seen this before, but I'd love to just take a moment and talk about that because it really does hit home when you think about it. When it's all said and done, what are the things we really regret?
Yeah, I don't think that we can hear this enough times because we just forget a million times a day, like what the whole thing that we're doing here is all about. So this is based on the work of Bronnie Ware, and she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. She was a hospice nurse and worked with dying people all day, every day. So let me see if I can remember what they are. They are, I wish that I had given myself permission to be happier. I wish that I had kept better in touch with friends and family. I wish that I had had the courage to be myself, more of myself, instead of like living according to the expectations of other people. I wish that I had had the courage to pursue my dreams, and I wish I hadn't worked so much.
Yeah. And I really want to hover on that first one, which is I wish I would have given myself permission to be happy because I think that there's so much packed in there, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. We're waiting to have enough time to be happy. Yeah. And I think there's also something underneath that, which is I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is that we have this belief that we have to earn our right to be happy through enough suffering.
Totally.
Yeah, and that is such a strange one too. And I think, and it gets, I completely agree with you because this is something that I certainly have experienced. Like, and I've almost even identified it as that. You're like, what are you earning? You know what I mean? Like, you can just do it. But I know for me, it's been like the ideas around success and the ideas around happiness have all sort of ridden on the backs of harder work. Like, that's just kind of how I was raised, I guess, and a lot of enforcement for that, where it's like, well, you work really hard and then at some point you can be happy, and you're like, well, man, that could be a really long time. You could end up working a really long time in order to do that. And then unfortunately, and this was a situation I found myself in for a while, it was a matter of, okay, I'm working really hard so that I can be happy, but this really hard work is making me miserable. And so you're like, well, now what? How do you get out of that loop? And I mean, I imagine that it's incredibly individual, literally for everyone as to what that comes up to. But I'd be curious to know if you have like a thought around that, or if there's something that you've seen, more often than not.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that you just said right there. And I just want to pinpoint what you said about, like, I'm working so hard to earn the right to be happy that I'm miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are we doing? So
yes.
I'll just give a real life example from my own life that I'm practicing right now, that everybody can extrapolate this to their own lives. I love to dance. I was a dancer all through school, all through college, and then I gave it up because I was like not going to be a professional dancer, and I thought I didn't have the right body. I like had a story that I was too fat and da da da. So it's like that. So I'm really sad and just like, okay. So, and I know like I am my happiest when I go to dance class and when I'm prioritizing that. And for years, like my entire 20s up until I was 32, before I even had kids, I had a story going that I didn't have time to dance. Mm-hmm. Which, P.S., during that time, I had so much time to dance. Like, I had no idea
the difference.
how much time I had. And now when I'm sort of at my busiest, right? Like I have this book out, I've got the 2 young kids, we have this business that we're running, lots going on. I am prioritizing going to dance class every week. Is it building my business? Is it productive? Does it have anything to do with my kids or my marriage? No. It is purely for me, for joy. And here's what I'm noticing when I'm taking the time out for this now, because I don't have to earn the right to be happy. I get to have this now. What I'm noticing, and if this weren't the case, it would still be worth it. But what's so cool is I still have plenty of time to do the other things. My marriage is better. I'm happier with my kids. I'm getting all the things done I need to do. And I am noticing that like my ability to show up in our company from a powerful place, which then allows us to make more revenue and impact more lives, is increasing. Now, do I know for sure it's going to dance class? No, but it's something that I'm prioritizing that's different than what I was doing before. And so I think that allowing ourselves to be happy now does actually improve our metrics, even if we can't necessarily track it.
I love that.
That's amazing.
I love it. Yes.
I know exactly what I'm going to do.
What is it? Can you tell us?
Well, yeah. So I guess a couple of months ago, because we mentioned briefly that we'd worked for the fire department. I worked for the fire department for 22 years.
Wow.
And I've been out for a year doing the full-time entrepreneurship thing, but I've always been interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I've had a really hard time fitting it into a schedule to be consistent enough. And a few months ago, I picked it up. And that's my dance class. I mean, there's no reason for me to do it other than I want to. In fact, I catch a fair amount of grief from Vanessa about it. She calls it aggressive snuggling. She's like, "You're gonna go?
Are you going to your aggressive snuggling class again?
You're gonna go cuddle with some dudes?" Yes.
I do like to give him a hard time, but I have noticed such a difference. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, and last night I did not go because we were busy doing some stuff, and we just made the decision not to go, and I regret it.
And which, by the way, I encouraged him to go.
Yeah, no, she was on it. She was on point with it. I'm a better person when I do it. There's no doubt. It's like for whatever reason. So that just really hit home with me because it really makes sense. It affects everything about how I operate on a daily basis, and and it's wild, like I can't really. Yeah, it's like I can't point to something. It's not like I'm an aggressive person and I need to go get my aggressions out or something. But it just works.
No, you just like cuddling.
I'm sure there's some things about like the studies of human touch, but I also think like there's this difference between time spent and time invested. So that, let's say your class is 90 minutes long, right? My dance classes are usually 90 minutes long. Plus it takes 20 minutes to drive there, 20 minutes to drive home. Like it's a deal.
Right.
And so And oh my gosh, with you guys in LA, I can only imagine how long it takes to get a place. But that time invested versus time spent, like sitting scrolling my phone, the time that's invested pays dividends, and versus time that's spent, you don't get anything back for that time. So I really like to categorize the way I'm spending my time, or the way I'm allocating my time in investing versus spending, to help me decide what to do and what not to do, and just to become a little more conscious about it.
Yeah, that's such a good idea.
Love that.
Simple.
So Tim Ferriss talks about something kind of similar, where he's talking about like the one big thing. So I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to fill their time with lots of things to accomplish said task or to achieve certain things. But what he talks about is actually taking less time in the doing and being more in the incubation period of figuring out what the one big thing is that will sort of topple all of the dominoes to that said outcome. What are your thoughts around that? And I'm curious if that is something that you talk about, or how you can encourage people to maybe like incubate a little bit more than be in action.
I love this so much. So if you study kind of like the most successful thinkers or business people, they're beginning, many of them, and I love the ones who are talking about this, are talking about building in think time and like stare at the wall time or stare out the window time. Or I just heard about this concept of taking a sabbatical every 7 weeks from Sean West. So this is becoming part of the zeitgeist little by little. I'm so excited about it, because here's what happens when we are constantly in action and thinking we have to grind and hustle and be in activity all the time. We cannot see straight. So it's like we're trying to get a deep breath, but our face is in the water. But if we would take a minute to stop swimming and just put our feet down on the bottom of the pool and stand up, we would be able to take a deep breath and pause. And at that point, you make your best decisions. You can see so much more clearly. And when we slow down and we get that space, we access our wisdom. So I like to think of busyness as like background noise. And if we slow down and create more space, whether it's 5 minutes in the morning meditating in your closet or every 7th week off, you have to do it in the amount that works for you in your current life, that we do, the volume gets turned off on all that background noise, and then we can hear ourselves. But we can't hear ourselves if we're constantly in motion, because it dampens the message.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, this has been absolutely delightful.
It has.
Honestly. Yes, I have really enjoyed this, and you just have such a wonderful energy exuding through the airwaves. And I just really enjoyed this, and I hope that folks out there will pick up the book, because it's really a great guide to actually slowly and systematically implementing some of this stuff. And so where can folks find it? Where can they find out more about you? You mentioned you have a podcast. Give us all the good deets.
Okay, great. So over on my website, katenorthrup.com is a great place to connect with me. You can also learn more about the book and get some free bonuses along with it over at katenorthrup.com/book. My husband and I host a weekly podcast called The Kate and Mike Show. So if you're into husband and wife podcasts, which you might be, and then I just hang out the most interactively on Instagram at Kate Northrup.
Awesome. Awesome, Kate. Well, we loved talking with you, loved getting to know you. Wish that you were not literally at the polar opposite end of the country, or we could hang out.
I know. I loved getting to know you guys too. This was so much fun.
But if you're ever in LA, please let us know. We'd love to meet in person, and we will let you know if we cycle into Maine anytime soon.
Not that many people stop by here, but if you do, I'm available.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right, folks. Thanks so much.
And that's all she wrote, folks. Hope you guys dug that.
Yes. And big announcement here. We've got an awesome giveaway going on over at Instagram with the amazing, beautiful Christina Kerp of Castaway Kitchen, who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And we are doing an awesome giveaway with her for a $100 gift card to Whole Foods, a signed copy of her book, an awesome cast iron pan skillet.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's all about the cast iron.
She's all about the cast iron, some snapware, a spatula, a cool fish spatula, pish spatula.
Pish spatula.
Pish spatula.
Which sounds like it's a weird part of your brain.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the anterior pish spatula.
Exactly. So for more on that, make sure you go over to Instagram, check out Be the Wellness, and you can get in on that awesome giveaway.
Yeah, it's everything you need to meal prep using cast iron with a fish spatula. It includes the book and $100 worth of spending dineros, credits, whatever, at Whole Foods.
I mean, it's everything you could ever want from a giveaway. I told you, this is like the Bumble filter still on.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
The Bumble filter. It's a good one.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.